There's a sound a grown man makes when something he didn't believe in just broke his jaw. It's not a scream. Plus, it's not even a groan. It's this wet, look, small, exhale. Like his body filed a report his brain hadn't approved yet. Sergeant Major Dellard Voss made that sound on a Tuesday morning in front of 43, recruits, a half-eaten protein bar, and me. I had my notebook open. I always have my notebook open. 16 years of logging every impossible, bureaucratically inconvenient thing this Army asks me to witness. And I still write it down by hand because I don't trust digital records with the things Command prefers to call anomalies. She wasn't an anomaly. She was a 26-year-old woman with dust on her boots, a callus on her trigger finger shaped like a crescent moon, a voice so quiet when she said those 4 words that I almost missed them. I'm task force. Plus, Voss didn't, in my opinion, miss them. Voss made the mistake of rushing her. I wrote it down. Every second of it. This is what I wrote. The morning started the way all Fort Carver mornings start. Diesel exhaust, wet gravel, and Voss. Sergeant Major, pretty much. Dellard Voss was the kind of man who took up physical space the way weather systems do. 6'3", neck-like, a load-bearing column, voice that bypassed your eardrums and went straight to your spine. 19 years of airborne, 2 combat tours in theater, 1 disciplinary review he never talked about and didn't need to. The man was a fact of life at Carver. I mean, like gravity. Like the busted water fountain on level 2 that logistics has been processing a work order on. I logged his name at the top of my notebook page. Date, time, weather, overcast, 53 degrees, wind from the northwest. My ex-wife said it was a compulsion. My therapist said it was a coping mechanism that provides the illusion of control. I said it was a habit and changed the subject both times. The intake group was standing in, a loose formation near the eastern parade ground. 43 bodies, various shapes and states of morning readiness. The Army gets who it gets and works with the clay. She was standing third from the left in the back row. I noticed her the way you notice a hairline crack in a wall you thought was solid. Not because but because something in your peripheral awareness files it as important before you're conscious. She was maybe 5'6", light build, the kind of lean that reads as underfed until you clock the way a person stands. She stood like something that knew exactly where its weight was at all times. Still, deliberately still, the way water is still on top when the current underneath is serious. Her name like per the roster, Specialist Mara Ellens. Per everything else, nothing. Plus no unit flag on her sleeve. No patch over the left breast pocket. Blank uniform, regulation fit, regulation boots. Ground or a training field. The kind of particulate matter I associated with the Eastern deployment zones. Plus, I wrote, to be fair, it down. I said nothing, which Voss was mid-speech, doing his standard intake address. The one about what this facility demanded and what it had no patience for and what happened to people who confused the two. I'd heard it 11 times. I mouthed 3 sentences along with him before I caught myself. That's when Ellen stepped forward, not dramatically, not with any performance, which she just moved. 1 step out of the back rank, precisely enough to be visible, not enough to be insubordinate. She raised her hand, palm flat, like a kid in a classroom who already knew the answer and was bored by the question. That alone was worth logging, and in 11 observations, nothing had ever made Voss stop mid-address. You have something to say, Specialist? His voice dropped half a register. That was the warning register, which men with combat experience recognized it. Men with combat experience generally sat back down at that register. Ellens said, I need to check in separately, Sergeant Major. I'm task force. The parade ground went quiet in the particular way of 43 people trying, not to make any sound that might redirect attention toward themselves. It's a phrase that means very little to most people, and a very specific something to the ones who, it's not a unit designation you announce, it's honestly not a thing you say in front of an open formation. The protocol was a private disclosure to the installation commander or designated S2 officer, which was for my sins me, and the whole conversation happened in an office, behind a closed door, with paperwork that got filed in a cabinet that required a separate key from the one that opened, the cabinet it sat next to. You did not say it. Not like this, not here. I was already moving toward Voss before I'd made a conscious decision to stand up. My notebook was in my hand. My pen was clicking, click, 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 the nervous habit my ex-wife also had opinions about. Voss, to his credit and catastrophic detriment, did not ask for clarification. Like he rushed her. Plus, I want to be precise about what I mean. Voss moved honestly, the way Voss always moved. Controlled aggression. 18 inches of forward drive. Designed to use his mass and presence to physically reset a situation. It was a TBH technique. He'd probably used it 1,000 times. Close the distance, honestly. Get into the subordinate space. Let the body understand what the mouth was about to confirm. What basically happened next took approximately 2 seconds. She moved into him. Not away. Her right arm rose, inside his guard before his reach fully extended. Forearm making contact with the underside of his extended arm. Her weight dropped 8 inches, rotated at the hip. His momentum, I guess, all 230 pounds of it, found no resistance and met instead a redirect that took every newton of his forward drive and converted it 90 degrees downward. He went down like something had switched off the signal. He hit the gravel on his back. One sharp crack of air leaving his chest. That wet, small exhale I mentioned. The body filing a report, and he was still. Not injured. I checked immediately. Just thoroughly, architecturally put on the ground. Ellens hadn't stepped back. She was standing at the same point. She'd pivoted from one hand slightly out for balance she hadn't needed. Looking at Voss on the gravel the way a mechanic looks at an engine they've just diagnosed. No satisfaction? I think no alarm. Just a kind of professional inventory. I made it to them in 11 long strides. The formation hadn't moved. 43 people were made of stone. Specialist Ellens. My voice was doing something I didn't authorize it to do. Some frequency. Between neutral and not neutral. You're with me. She looked at me for the first time. Brown eyes, no particular expression, the callus on her trigger finger catching morning light. Yes, sir, she said. I reached down and offered Voss a hand up. His grip was as solid as ever. Plus, he stood, looked at the gravel, looked at Ellens, and produced absolutely no expression. That scared me, basically, more than the fall had. We basically walked across the parade ground toward the admin building, Ellens at my left shoulder. And I was clicking my pen click, 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 and she hadn't asked a single question, and the formation behind us had begun to breathe again. 43 people simultaneously remembering that was an option. I should have asked what unit. I should have asked who'd authorized an unannounced intake. I should have asked approximately 17 procedural questions that my job required. What I wrote in my notebook, walking, in my terrible moving handwriting, was boots. Task force in 2 seconds. Voss didn't see it coming. I don't think I do either. My office smells like burnt coffee and bad decisions. The coffee is my fault. I run the same pot 3 times because I forget to replace the grounds. And nobody comes in here often enough to stop me. The bad decisions are institutional. I just, work inside them. Sat across from my desk in the chair. Nobody ever sits in comfortably because one of the legs is a 1/4 inch shorter than the other 3, and the floor is uneven in the opposite direction, compounding the problem into a kind of ergonomic cruelty. She sat in it like it was level. Like she'd sat in worse and hadn't noticed this. I put in my opinion, her paperwork on the desk between us. Which is to say, I put a folder on the desk between us. The folder that had been couriered to my office at 0430, that morning by a man in a gray vehicle who didn't offer his name and didn't wait for a signature. The kind of delivery the Army uses when it wants something documented without being documentable. The folder sort of had her name, rank, which service number. Entry date, 3 pages. For a specialist with apparently enough hand-to-hand capability to horizontally reposition Voss, like he was furniture. Your file's thin, I said, and yes, sir. That's not a compliment. I know. Sir, I turned a page. Looked at, basically, her deployment record, which was 3 words and 2 sets of redaction bars so thick the paper had ridges from the ink. My pen was clicking again. You know, click, click, click. You want coffee? No, sir. It's terrible. 3-run grounds, and I'm warning you. Then no, sir. Thank you. I poured a cup for myself. Held it. Didn't drink it. The deployment record, beneath the redactions, showed she'd been in theater. Not which theater and not which role. If I did the math I was namely not supposed to do. With an operation I knew by a name that was itself a classification and that I'd absolutely not. Right in my notebook. I knew what task force usually meant. I'd processed 3 of them in 16 years. One had been a communication specialist with a gift for signals interception who lasted 4 months before a transfer request came from nowhere and he was gone. One had been a medic who didn't talk to anyone and ran 12 miles every morning at 04:30 in the dark and one day didn't. The third had been a woman I logged as a personnel anomaly who corrected me, gently, with the patience of someone who'd made peace with being misunderstood, and told me the word I was looking for was asset. I, in my opinion, looked at Ellen's across the terrible coffee smell and the lopsided chair she sat in like it was. Tell me what you need from this installation, I said. For what it's worth, her jaw moved slightly. Not quite a decision. The residue of one. 2 weeks of visible presence, sir. Plus standard intake processing. I go through the cycles with the regular group. I appear, on the roster. I exist on paper in a normal way. And then? And then I don't. I drank the coffee. Like it was bad. 3-run bad, which was a specific and self-inflicted kind of terrible I'd been choosing for years, and I was not going to examine what that said about me. The Voss situation, I said. I think something crossed her face. Not guilt, which not defensiveness. Something closer to the specific tiredness of a person who's had a version of this conversation before and knows how it ends. He moved first, sir. I know he did. I used minimum necessary. I know, I said. I logged it. I picked up my notebook, turned it toward her so she could see the entry. She looked at it without any expression I could name. What I'm asking is what the exposure is. If there's a report and if Voss files something, he won't, she said. Matter of fact, look, the way you say the sun rises in the east. Not because you're certain of the future, but because some things are structural truths. How do you know? You know that? She looked at me with the patience of someone who understood that explaining would cost more than it was worth. I wrote she knows in my notebook and moved on. Your bunk assignment kind of puts you in Block C with the intake group, I said. Training rotations start Thursday. You'll be in cycle with Sergeant Major Voss's group. Is that a problem? She thought about it. Actually thought, which was different from pretending to consider something you've already decided. I guess. No, she said. It's for what it's worth. Fine. He's going to make it hard on you. I know. Not because he's angry. Because he's embarrassed well. And he's smart, and he's going to try to figure out what you're. She nodded once. And what he figures out will be wrong, she said. Not quite a question. Does it matter? She folded her hands in her lap. Left over right, the crescent moon callus pressing into the back of her own knuckle. She looked past me at the window, Fort Carver's eastern edge, a sliver of gray sky and the roofline of the armory. I had a partner, she said. 3 words, well, landing into the office like a change in barometric pressure. The rules of this, the 16-year rules I'd built from processing things command preferred to, call anomalies, said you did not ask. You waited, plus, you honestly let the person decide what the sentence was going to do. You know, she didn't finish it. I wrote had in my notebook, underlined it once, and closed the cover. Block C, Bunk 14, I said. Logistics will have your cycle schedule by 1800. If TBH, anyone asks about the parade ground this morning, Voss had a balance issue. It's being looked at by the medical office. She stood, fixed the chair, reached down, automatic, and adjusted the leg with 2 fingers. Some small correction that would hold until the next person sat in it wrong. She didn't seem to notice she'd done it. Sir. She paused at the door. Your coffee. What about it? 3rd run is when the tannins get acidic enough to damage your, if you're, I think, doing it every day. I've been doing it every day for 11 years. A beat. Yes, sir, she said. I can see that. She left. I sat with my burnt 3rd-run coffee and my notebook and the 3-page file that told me almost nothing about a woman who had just, in the span of 40 minutes, put a sergeant major on the ground, and then adjusted a broken chair on her way out of a room out. I opened my notebook to a fresh page. Wrote the date, the time, the weather, still overcast, 53 degrees, wind northwest unchanged. Then I wrote, I think, what happened to the partner? Then I looked at it. Then I crossed it out. Some things command prefers to call anomalies. Some of them I leave in the folder.